Hi, and welcome back to Learn Visual FoxPro. I apologize for the delay in the videos coming along. It has been a crazy week and a half. I've just not had the time to get back to this. Anyway, I have stole a few moments from other projects just so I don't lose momentum on this and not complete it. So tonight, what I want to do is to try and complete two forms, and actually they work in sync. It will be the customer's list form and the customer information form itself, which we'll use to edit customer information. So let us take a quick look at the application at present, and we'll go run. And so we have our menus, and not all of them are wired up. I think this works. Yeah, and the staff works, and you saw the issues that we had in the last lesson trying to resolve this. So I anticipate more of the same tonight. Okay, so and then we have customers, and then we've got issues. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at the customers form tonight. So let's get started. So this form, what I wanted to do, I'm going to make it to function sort of like a list view box with a list view here of all our customers, and I'm going to put a few options up here to allow us to search for customers within the list. So we need a grid control. Drop a grid here. And let's take this guy. Actually, I'll leave this here. We want a label, properties window. So what we're going to have is a list of all the columns that will be in our list, and we'll allow the user to specify which column they want to search on. And then we're just going to make this very simplistic, and then we'll say another button, another label here. We'll say look for and they can type what they want to search for there. Okay, so let's I think we can put an image on this. So let's go down to okay, I'm looking for either icon or picture property. I don't see, let's go to I, there's no I here. And for picture, that's interesting. Okay, I'll come back to that in a bit. We should be able to attach, I wanted to put a search image there, but let's just go ahead and use this ActiveX control. Actually, sorry, this guy, image control, and drop that there. Seemed like I was mistaken about the labels. Okay, and so then we just go out, we find our picture, and we'll go to my computers. And Visual FoxPro comes with a set of standard graphics that we can use in our apps freely. So we go to graphics and icons. See what computers have. I'm looking for the binoculars icon, so it's not there. Oh, here we go. So I choose binoculars, and that doesn't look too pretty. Let's see if we can set this to stretch. Okay, so that looks better. Okay. Okay, now what we want to do with this guy is to give it the look of a toolbar. So it appears as for toolbars here. And that looks much better. So we'll drag that over. And make this a little wider. Okay, and then we put our grid here. And we drag that down. Now also, what we're going to do in this lesson is I'm going to include on the form, a ActiveX control, and see if we have any. We have ActiveX controls. Okay, it says I have nothing selected. So what I actually want to do is drop a status bar control on the form. So let's go into Tools, Options here, and go Controls, and ActiveX Controls. Scroll through the list, and look for the Microsoft stuff. Okay, so there are two. There is the 6.0 SP4 or version 5. I sometimes just tend to go with the simpler one just in case everybody's not ready to SP4, but they should. So let's go with the newest one. And if there are any other controls that you may think you may need, you can go through the list and just simply select them all. And so let me show you that. So I'll click Set as Default, so it will always be there. Click OK. So now when I can change the control menu that I see at design time by clicking on this button here. I could add my own controls by using the add, and if I had a class, which we'll look at in another some other video sometime, or we can go ActiveX control, and the ones that we've selected will appear here. So I've only selected the status bar control, so that's the only one listed here. I'll click on it and I'll drop it down here and resize it and resize this. Okay, so let's anchor this to go with the form, so it needs to be anchored on all sides. Okay, and this control needs to be anchored to stretch left and right only. And of course, by default, the the status bar will take care of itself, so I need not worry about that. Okay. So what I want to show in here, and I will right mouse click and select the SB control properties, not this one. This will bring you to your regular Visual FoxPro properties. I want the ActiveX control properties, and so the status bar contain panels, and by default I think I have one in there. Yep. And I want to add another one, and so I'll just say insert a panel, and so now you can see down here that we have two panels, and I'm going to use these to give us record count. So I'll go back to the first one, and I'm going to put in here records, and the next one I'll simply put 0 in here, and I will write justify that, and click OK. So that's how it will look for now, and as data is filled into our table, we'll simply update this. Okay, so a few things we want to do is to specify our table. So let's go up to the form, and of course we could use the what's a guy called data environment, okay, to do the opening of the tables for us, which I'm going to do, and simply add customers and close. And in fact, I could have dragged. It's probably better. Let me delete this. Go back here and just drag the customer table onto the form, and then I'll get a grid there. Okay, so right now the form is set to show deleted records. You can tell by this bar here. We want to take that off, so delete mark. We'll double click, set to false, and by default again it shows all the columns in our table, such as the ID column, which is auto-generated. We don't want to show that one, and so we're going to delete that column, and I'll show you in a minute just how to do that. Okay, so there's some other properties here on the grid that we can set. Allow add new, that's false, yet we don't want the user to be able to add records within the grid itself. Auto column will allow that. Allow cell selection, we want to turn that off. Allow header resizing, yeah, we'll allow that. Row resizing, yeah, we'll allow that too. Okay, so what we can do is to I'm going to change some of the grid lines here. I only want the none kind of looks nice, but let's go with the vertical. I'll just go with verticals, and I'm going to change the color so that's not so bold. Let's go with gray. Oops, what was that? My bad. I want the grid lines color. Okay, so that's a little faint, and that's better. Okay. Scroll bars, yeah, both. And what we're going to see by dragging the table onto the form, I get the grid, and so all the data stuff is wired up for me. The record source is set to customers, and the record type, of course, is set to alias, and so I never have to worry about that. And I could set this to read only, which is probably safe to do if you're not using version 9 of Visual FoxPro. Version 9 allows me to disable cell selection. So this, by me setting this to false, I get the same results basically. Let's give the form a title, and here's that caption. Okay, let's give it a run and see what it looks like. Save. Oh, we need to save it. Form, and we'll call this test. Okay, so when it runs, it looks there's nothing in here yet, and that's fine. We should be able to resize this and have that behave quite nicely. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Could just maximize it as well, and we'll close. So we want to get rid of this column, and we want to change, or at least capitalize the first letters of the header of these columns. So we'll look at how to edit the header records, and we can change the description if we want. Alright, so I'm going to change these to look flat. I don't like the 3D in the search window, so we'll scroll down to Special Effects, turn 3D off, and we get a nice flat look to our button. So that looks better. And so we click on the grid, and we can do it this way. Click on the in the properties window, go to the first column, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, instead of deleting it, I could delete it by just simply clicking over here on the grid and pressing the delete key. Let's do that, and it says remove column and all contents, and I could click yes. I'm going to say no because I may want that later on for some other purpose. So what I'll do is just simply make it invisible. So we'll put visibility to false here, and that takes care of that. Okay, so the next column, I'll click on it here, is company, and of course I'm on the header. So just something to note, every column begins with the name column and the number, and then every column has or houses a header control and a text box control by default. And then you notice header 1, so column 2 has a header 1 and a text 1, column 3 has a header 1 and a text 1, and so forth, right up to however many columns we have in our table. Okay, so what we want to do is to change company, capital C, and we want to put company name, and we're going to change this to 8, make it a little smaller, and we could also change the font to MS Sans Serif, and I'll just keep pressing M here until it gets to MS Sans Serif, which is a Microsoft standard for forms, at least I think it used to be. They may be changing it now. Contact, so we'll make that 8 as well, and M. Okay, it's a little tedious, and so you'll see traditionally when you start to code, and especially when we start to work with objects, what I would have done is to create my own grid and set all these properties beforehand. So once I create a new grid, I wouldn't have to go through all the trouble of resizing. So I'm going to speed this up a bit. Okay, so I did all the headers, and I need now to do all the text boxes. And I did start this, and there actually is an easier way. We can do this in code. So we'll go to forms, and what I'll do is in the initialization code, I will say this form, this set all, and I'll set all properties to I'll set properties. I want to set the font size and to 8. Yeah, doesn't matter what it is. And set all font name. I'll verify that to MS Sans Serif. And that's for everybody. So it's font name, that's right, and font size. Okay, so that should do the trick. Okay, so what else we want to do? We want to, here as well, we want to add all the columns in the table for searching, so that would pop up there, and we want to count, when there's a count of the number of records, we want to show that down here. Okay. Also, we want to probably add a pop-up menu on the grid to allow us to open any customer records listed here as well, to open, edit, to add a new, edit, or delete. And so we'll show you how to do that. Okay, so where do I start now? Let's go with populating this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind an array to this one. So we're going to add an array to the form. We go form, we go new property, and we will say A, and we'll just call it FLDS for fields. I'll put the square brackets there and make it 1. I have to do this. Well, I could actually specify the full size, but just by putting 1 in bracket in square brackets, this will tell Visual FoxPro that I want to add an array property and not just a regular property, and then we should be good. I'll just add that and close, and I'll show that to you here. I tend to have to use, because I've used up all the space on the form with other controls, I have to use the properties window just to get back to the form. And again, we can see all the controls here. I go to form, and if I go to other, I should see the property that I have here, all field. Of course, if you go all and scroll to the bottom, you will see your fields here. Now, one of the new things with Visual FoxPro 9, actually, I'll leave that for later. Okay, so we have a fields, and I want to populate this, and in fact, I'm going to bind this array, this combo box, to that array that I just created. So we'll go to data, and we'll say row source. That's where you're getting your data from. It's this form, and you want to use the FLDS array, and I will tell the system to use an array. Okay, and so that's that. I want to also make this list a drop-down list and not a combo box. So we need to change the style on this, as you saw me did with the other form that we worked with. So we'll change the type to 2, so it becomes a drop-down list and not a combo box. Okay, so that's done, and then now we need to populate the array. And we'll go into the load event method. So first we're going to resize the array. So we'll use the dimension keyword, and we'll specify the array. And I want it to be, we want to search on company. How many fields are here? About 9 or 10? I think we have 9. Okay, and I'm going to make this array 2-dimensional. So 9 rows, 2 columns. Okay, and now I'll initialize it. Okay. First row, column 1, will store the description of the field as I want the user to see it. So let's scroll back over. So we have, note I have company name here. And what I've just done was to, if I click off of here, I can control click on the grid to go into edit mode. Another way to do that is to right mouse click on the grid and to select edit. So that way I'm able to resize the columns within the grid itself. And I could even drag address over if I wanted like that. But you can also do that at runtime, just like you would for a browse. And also I can navigate. Okay, so make city a little wider. It's probably too wide. Okay, state's just 2, so that's fine. Zip phone. And that should be good. Okay, so what I want the user to see is company names. This description, even though the field, the actual field in the table, is just company. And that is why we created a 2-dimensional array, so that I can, I'll display one to the user and use the second one for searching. So company name. Okay, so now that you have the gist of that, I'm just going to speed this up as well. Okay, so let me magnify this window a little bit so you can see what happened here. So first we declared we resized the array to 9 rows, 2 columns, and then we went about populating the rows and columns within the array. So row 1, column 1 has the description of company name, row 1, column 2, the field that I will use to search on. So I started doing this, and then I got to address and realized that, well, the same description happens to be the same as the search field name. So I got lazy and left that blank, and wherever the description matched the actual field name, I left it blank. And so what I'll do, I'll simply insert logic in my code that when you go to use the search field, if it's empty, then use the description, because then it means that the name is the same. Okay, and so we need to change this to 8. Okay. Okay. So our array is now populated, and we're going to write some search code in a minute. Let's resize this. Okay. Okay, next we're going to add a method called, what we'll actually do is not so much just a locating of the record. We'll actually apply a filter to the list, so only those records that match the criteria will be listed, and those that don't will be hidden from the user. Okay, so we'll just create a new method which is analogous to a procedure or function, but in object-oriented terms they're called methods. Okay, a method is simply a procedure or function within a class or an object. So we're adding a method to our form class, and we'll call this set filter. Set file tr, add, close, and I forgot that we needed some buttons here. We're going to need a find button, and okay. Let this float around a bit. In the old version, we had an option to have this always appear on top, and now they've taken it out since we have the dockable. Anyway, we'll make do. So we want to make the caption on this one to be find, and Okay, and so these two, we want them to, well, we won't do anything with these, except with the, okay, so when we click on the find button, and in the click event method, we want to call the set filter function. So it's this set, sorry, this form, set filter, and we need to give it the, we would need to give it the field. So we'll say this form CBO value. Okay, I'm actually pausing. I'm thinking exactly how I'm going to implement this. And actually, we'll do it this a different way. I'll just use variables here and populate them. So we'll say C field and C text. Okay, so what we want to do is to and C field will take the list index value of the combo box, because every item in the combo box has a number, and so when it's selected, the list index property will actually return that number. And given that we are actually interested in the second column of the array, let me just quickly review that. Let's go back up to forms, and yeah, ignore all for now. And where's the load? Remember, we're using a two-dimensional array, and so the user will see company name, but I need to pull out the value for the search field. So we're just going to apply a little logic to that. So let me get back to the button. Okay, let's speed it up by doing it this way. And so what we'll do is say C field is equal to immediate if A Okay, I'm going to do this, and just for the sake of clarity, I won't make the code too cryptic. So we'll say if, let's introduce another variable, an item. And we're looking at the second value. So if this is empty, if it's empty, we know we need to use the value in the first column, and so we'll just copy this, and the C field be equal to 1. Otherwise, we take the value in the second position. Okay, so that takes care of getting the field, and of course we know that C text is always equal to this form txt text search dot value, and we're good to go. And we call the filter routine. Okay, so we first determine which field is selected from the drop-down list, and we get the description of that field. If the second column is empty, then we take the description of the field itself. Otherwise, we take the column name specified. So that's the column we want to search for. And that's a great feature, because then we can display anything, any description we want, and behind the scenes we'll know which field to look into to perform our search. So in here you'll see how we'll actually perform the filtering, and let's jump into that right now. So we're going to, in this function, we'll need to accept two arguments. So we'll say L parameter, and we'll take TC field name, and TC the search expression. Okay, I'll just call it TCXPR, or search text. Okay, so what we want to do again is just to set the filter. There's only one table open, so I don't need to select it or worry about not working with the right table or the current table. And so all I'll do is to set the filter command here. So first off, what I want to do is to clear any previous filters, just as a precaution. So I'll say set filter to. And then we'll say set filter to the field name. So essentially, what we want to do is something similar to, let's say we were searching on the company. We would say company, which is a field, is equal to value, say, Dell. Okay, and that would create a filter. But we're working with variables here, and so we'll need to construct this a little differently. So I'm going to do something and explain it in a bit. So this function you should know, all trim, and what I'm going to do is make the search case insensitive. So I'm going to convert everything to uppercase, and what I'm going to also do is to transform. Let's see what we're working with. We're working with all character types, so yeah, I really don't need to do anything there. So I'm going to put this and TC. Okay, now you may be asking yourself, what does the ampersand mean? And I will be looking at this in a lesson on its own, but FoxPro allow us to use macros. And so what this is a macro substitution. So FoxPro will actually expand the value stored in here as if I had typed a literal command on the line. So let me document this. Use macro expansion to okay, so let's divert for a little bit. Let's go to the command window. Okay, let me close this out. Save this. And so let's say, do I have a table open? Make this very quick. Okay, so we'll open the staff table because we have data in there, and I can browse. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to browse a table, I would type the command browse in the window, and press enter key. Okay. If I were to type browse and press enter key, Visual FoxPro would not execute the browse command as it did up here. However, I can get Visual FoxPro to do that by storing this value in a variable. So I'll call it C macro is equal to browse. So macro, the variable C macro is storing browse, which for all intents and purposes is just a regular string. But I can ask Visual FoxPro to interpret the contents of that string as a literal command, and that is what the macro substitution does. So if I then put ampersand C macro, I'm in effect telling Visual FoxPro read the contents of C macro and execute the contents as if I had typed a literal command on the line. So let's see if that works. And no doubt it did. So that's macro substitution for you. And again, I will delve into this a little more, perhaps in a video all on its own. Okay. So what I did, let's while I have this up, what I did with the set filter. Let's take, for instance, we have username David, and I could do this: set filter to username, which is the column name here, is equal to David. Enter key. When I go back to the browse window, only the record that satisfy this filter will be listed, and so we only see David, which is the same behavior we want in our customer list box. Now, to accomplish this, there are several ways to do it, but I found macro substitution to be the fastest in terms of, may not be the fastest in terms of the execution, but the fastest in terms of me having to type a whole bunch of code just to get the same thing done. So what I did, let's take the filter off, was to store, say, C field is equal to username, and C value is equal to David. And in effect, I did this: set filter to ampersand C field equal, and put in bracket C value. Okay. And of course, I get the same results here. So let me turn off the filter. Let's go back up here and see everybody. And so I come back down here, press enter key. I get the same result, because this is expanded to just be David in quotes, and this is expanded to be as username. So when the macro substitution is done, this is equivalent to what I have up here. So these are the exact same. Let me expand this out a little bit. So for the newbies, for the complete newbie who have never used macro substitution, that's macro substitution in a nutshell. And why I did it that way, because I could use, I could simply have put C value here, but then it would require, filter requires that the variable be global, and I don't like working with global variables, and so I use macro substitution, so literal values will be used in implementing the filter. Okay, so enough on that. Let's go back to work. Okay, so staff list, no, customers. Okay, so we've implemented find, and we need to implement clear, and we're just going to take the shortcut and just say set filter to go top, and we want to refresh the form. This form refresh. In fact, we need to do the same in the other routine. So let's go to set filter. So after we've set the filter, we need to move the record pointer, go to the top, and then refresh. Okay, so that should be good. And of course, one more functionality that we want to implement is the count here. So let's do that quickly, and we'll do that in the refresh event. Is it an event? Let's see, or it's a method. Actually, the refresh method is not an event. Events have these little yellow lightning bolt. Methods just have the green cube. Okay, so in the refresh method, which is called every time you call refresh on the form. So when I say this form.refresh, it's actually calling this method. So I can customize here and say do some special things for me. So every time the list is refreshed, do a count on the number of records I have, and then update the status bar. So first off, we want to note the current position of the record pointer. So we don't want to, if the person is on the third record, because we have to count will actually move the record pointer. So once we've done that, we need to reset the record pointer to where it was initially. So that is why we'll do it here is equal to immediate if we're at the end of file, then return -1, which indicates that there are no records in the table. Otherwise, give me the current record number. And rec_no does that, returns that value. And so we'll go there. So npos is equal to that. And then what we do is simply count. So count and some other functions affect a global system variable that FoxPro manages called tally. So it will return the tally, that is a total count, in that variable. So I don't need to say count to nvar. Okay, so save yourself some typing there. Okay, so what we want to do is to reset the record pointer. Okay, so the status bar would be an OLE control. Let's give it a name so that I can better reference it. So let's go properties here as an OLE control. Let's call it SBCTRL for status bar control. And we'll go back here and say this SB control dot panels, and I'm updating panel number 2, so I'll put the number here. Dot text is equal to transform tally, and I'm going to format this with some, just in case we have a lot of customers. Okay. So that takes care of that. Okay, so a few more things that we need is the ability to call a pop-up menu from the grid, and I'm just going to do this the quick and dirty way. So let's go back to, let's save this. Save. Let's go back to the project. And let's create a menu, and we'll do new, and the option is regular menu, shortcut menu, shortcut of course. And what I want is we want new customer, and we could probably put an icon on that as well. Let's go with resource, and we'll select the new. Okay, so we get this nice little icon there on that, and this is a command, and we'll say this form new cust. We're going to create a method called new cust on our form. I'm going to show you all that, how it plays out, and then we want edit, and command this edit cust, and delete. Of course, we can put shortcuts in these as well, and we'll make this into a command, and we'll call the form, delete this form, del cust. Okay, and we'll put a bar here, and we'll put a refresh, just in case it's not refreshing fast enough for you. We'll force a refresh on our form. So we'll say this form refresh. There we go. Okay, and we'll preview, and that looks good. Not sure if there's something we can do for delete. Let's go over source. Okay, that's just cosmetics and time's going, so feel free to experiment with that yourself. I'll go here and say generate, and do you want to save a shortcut designer? Actually, not really, but anyway, yeah, we'll say yes, and we'll start in here. Alright, so cust short, and we'll generate the code. Close this, and then what I want to do is actually I want to edit that code, so I'm going to add all files. So this is the code that is generated for us, and if I wasn't lazy, I could type this out all by myself, but then why? Okay, so I'm going to take all of this, Control C, and I'm just going to paste it into my form. So what I do is right mouse click, bring up the properties window, and we'll go to methods. Note that I'm on the grids, GRD customers, and I wanted to put this in the right click event method. So right click, double click, paste, and we're good. And yep, that should be all we need. Okay. So all this we get. Okay, so this should be this form. So all we need to do now is to implement new cust, edit cust, and delete cust, and we should have function in the menu. So let's quickly put that in. I won't implement those right now because we don't have any customers in the form, and let's see how we're doing for time. Okay, almost an hour. Alright, that's fine. So we'll go new cust, and edit cust, and del cust. Okay. And so at the form level, we have these new methods, and they should be at the bottom here: del cust, edit cust, new cust. And we'll put the code in, of course, to accomplish all of that. So let's take a run of this. Where's the run button? It left me. Form, run, save changes, and let's check this out. We have all our stuff here. So if we wanted to search an address, and then we'll type in 200 Stately Boulevard, whatever. Of course, we have nothing in here, so that doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, we could find and so forth. And then we can right mouse click on our on our grid here, We get this nice looking menu, and of course there's no code there, but I can click. Okay, it says this form only to use within a method. Okay, not a problem. I'll fix that, and I sometimes forget these things. Okay, so we'll close this out. And so let's go ahead and fix that. What I'm going to do is to quickly wrap this video up, and it's 11:20, way past my bedtime. All right, and in the next lesson we'll look at actually creating the customer information form that will work with this form, and we'll do some additional wiring up. So okay, let's see some fixes here. And it's absolutely right, because the menu operates outside of our form, and this form only relates to inside our form. I know the code is within the control, but in essence it does operate outside of the form. And so we need another mechanism to access these methods on our form, and we can do that using the global reference to the Visual FoxPro IDE, which is underscore screen. So we can use screen. We can use that one. We could use VFP as well, which refers to the application, but I'll go with screen. So what we'll do, we'll change this to underscore screen, and what it does, it has a property here, which is just a variable that points to the active form. The active form is the topmost form, and so I'll use this one, and that should do the trick. So let's change out all of this to okay, and just for completeness, I'm just going to show you. Just going to put some messages in these methods. So message box, add new customer. Okay, if we run this again, okay, let's try that, and I'll go new. It says add new customer, so that works. And edit existing customer, and delete, and refresh should work. Okay, but traditionally, if there are no objects, no items in the grid, in the list, then only new should be available, because you can't edit what doesn't exist, neither can we delete what doesn't exist. And okay, we exit that. What else do we need to do here? So essentially, we just need to create now the customer information form, which will be called from this screen, and we can go new and do all the stuff that we need to do. Okay, I'm just thinking if there are any loose ends. In any case, if there are any, we will tie them up in the next video. Have a good evening.